My wife, who is 29 years old and beautiful, told me she wants to have relationships outside our marriage. She was very clear about it, and it was easy for me to understand. To start, I had planned an elegant dinner at one of our favorite restaurants. I made sure everything was perfect, with an excellent selection of wines. I even bought her a diamond necklace she'd been hinting at, spending almost $1,000 on it. But I knew I'd soon need to recover that money. During dinner, I could tell she was uncomfortable. Our usually relaxed conversations had a bit of tension. She seemed distracted, looking around the place like she was searching for something or someone. Normally, when she looked at me, her gaze was steady, but now it wandered, unfocused. Finally, after we finished the main course and had more wine, she brought up what was on her mind. "Love, there's something I've been thinking about for a while, and I think it's time we talk about it," she said, her tone changing to a serious one, as it does when something important is on her mind. I stopped my fork, carefully placing my wine glass on the table. What could she be talking about? Her tone had shifted to one of seriousness, and I began to wonder what she might say. Was she going to tell me she was ready to have a baby? We'd talked about that before, agreeing to wait until we were more settled in our careers and finances. Well, we had reached those goals, and I was excited about the idea of starting a family, but her avoidance of eye contact suggested it was something else. When we talked about starting a family, we were always smiling and couldn't stop looking at each other, but that night something felt wrong. "Love, we need to talk," Andrea began, with a serious look on her face that told me this wasn't just any conversation. "I've been thinking a lot, and this is really important to me," she continued, her voice trembling slightly. "I need to figure out more about who I am outside of us. I think it will help me be a better partner for you in the long run." I was stunned, my mind racing. "What are you saying?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I leaned forward, trying to catch her gaze, but she wouldn't look at me. "I want to see other people, Rob. I want us to be okay with this to avoid hurting each other in the future." That hit me like a ton of bricks. My heart started pounding, and I could feel my face turning red. "What do you mean, other people?" I demanded, needing her to spell it out clearly. My voice was now louder, filled with a mix of disbelief and anger. "Are you talking about dating other men?" She paused, biting her lip. "Yes, that could be part of it," she finally said. The room spun around me. "You're telling me you want to date other men and expect me to be okay with it?" I couldn't contain the frustration boiling inside. "Andrea, how can you think this is okay?" She reached across the table, trying to take my hand, but I pulled away. "I love you, Rob. That hasn't changed. I just need to explore this part of me, it's something I have to do." Her words felt like a betrayal, and no matter how calmly she tried to explain it, I couldn't understand. As we sat there, the noise of the restaurant faded into the background, and I realized our lives might never be the same again. "What the hell are you talking about, Andrea?" I couldn't keep the shock out of my voice. "You want to have an affair and expect me to just nod and agree while you go out with other men? My God." My words were louder than I realized, and I could feel the stares of other diners burning into us. "Lower your voice, love," Andrea whispered. "We don't need the whole place hearing us." That's when it hit me, she had chosen this crowded restaurant on purpose, assuming I wouldn't make a scene in public. She had set me up, and I was completely blindsided. My stomach churned, and I felt sick, like I could throw up everything we'd just eaten. The only thing I could think to ask was, "Why, Andrea? Why other men?" I pressed for answers. "What does exploring yourself mean? Are you saying you want to sleep with other men? Are you leaving me?" She looked at me, her eyes soft but firm. "No, Rob, I'm not leaving you. There are many reasons I feel like I need to do this. Please believe me when I say I love you deeply, you're my soulmate. I see a future with us growing old and starting a family. But right now, there are things I'm missing, things I need to discover about myself. I'm asking for just a few months to explore this. After that, I'll be all yours again. I promise. Her words were meant to be reassuring, but they hung in the air between us, heavy and uncertain. Could I really accept this? Could our marriage survive it? The thought tormented me as I sat there, trying to process what she was asking of me. This had to be the worst thing I could have imagined. During our 5th anniversary dinner, my wife had dropped the bombshell that she wanted to start seeing other men. She expected me to just go along with it, nodding like nothing was wrong, promising that afterward everything would go back to normal, as if nothing had happened. She even claimed it would make her a better wife. I was speechless, my mind completely blank, and I couldn't even breathe properly, feeling like I was trapped in some kind of dream. I stood up, carefully placed my napkin on the table, and downed the rest of my wine in one gulp. Without saying a word, I set the glass down, turned, and walked out. "Love, where are you going?" she called after me. "I don't know," I replied without turning around, "but you should probably take a taxi home." I headed out of the restaurant, found my car, and just drove. I didn't have a destination in mind, I just needed to get away. My head was pounding, the pain starting at the base of my skull and spreading everywhere, making it hard to think. Lost in the noise of the engine and the blur of streetlights, time and place no longer mattered. The next morning, I woke up in my car, my head throbbing, and my surroundings unfamiliar. I got up, stretched, and looked around, trying to convince myself that the night before had been just a nightmare. First, I desperately needed to use the bathroom and find a large cup of coffee. I also needed a plan before I could even think about going home. After taking care of my needs behind a nearby bush, I got back in the car, started the engine, and set off in search of that much-needed coffee. I found a small diner, ordered breakfast with my coffee, and sat down to think things through, letting my mind clear. Letting my wife have relationships with other men was out of the question, it would definitely be the end of our marriage. Despite everything she said last night, I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't the woman I thought I'd married. Maybe she was having some sort of crisis, imagining ideas completely detached from reality. I'm no psychiatrist, just a guy who's incredibly confused right now. I checked my phone, which I had turned off at some point during the night. When I turned it on, I saw several messages and missed calls from Andrea. She was worried about where I was and how I was doing. At that moment, I didn't feel ready to go home or talk to her, but I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. I decided not to respond to her messages just yet. After downing several cups of coffee and devouring a hearty breakfast of eggs and bacon, I sketched out a basic plan for what I would do next. It was time to face the situation waiting for me at home. When I pulled into the driveway, Andrea ran out of the front door, her face full of concern. "Love, where were you all night? I was so scared, thinking you might have had an accident or something worse," she said, trying to kiss me. I pulled away and said firmly, "Andrea, I need to shower and freshen up. After that, we need to sit down and seriously talk about this exploring idea you mentioned last night." I walked past her and headed straight to the bathroom to get out of the suit I'd been wearing all night. I took a long, hot shower, using the time to rehearse what I needed to say. Doubts swirled in my mind, I had to figure out if I still had a wife or if this was her way of saying goodbye. Maybe it was just a test to see how committed I was. Trying to understand what she was thinking was driving me crazy. I loved her, no question about that. I married her, we had a beautiful wedding and celebrated with a trip around Europe. I had never even thought about being with another woman, I was completely committed. But now, it seemed like she wasn't on the same page. Luckily, we didn't have children, which simplified things a little. Whether that would change or not depended entirely on how the next few days and weeks played out. After changing into clean clothes, I headed to the kitchen to prepare another cup of coffee. I grabbed a notebook and a pen, noticing Andrea sitting at the kitchen island with her eyes fixed on me. I tried to appear calm, but inside, my emotions were in turmoil. Coffee in hand, I sat down across from her. "All right, Andrea, could you please explain again why you want to pursue relationships outside of our marriage? Andrea looked me directly in the eyes and said, "Love, I need to experience validation as a woman. Right now, I feel like my needs aren't being met. I want to explore what those needs are and see if I can find satisfaction on my own." "So, you're uncertain about your needs and are looking to discover them?" I summarized, trying to keep my tone firm. "And you're also planning to temporarily step back from our relationship to find what you're looking for?" "No, love, I'm not leaving. I'll stay here in our home with you," Andrea quickly responded. "However, I need the freedom to set my own schedule and do things at my own pace." "When do you think you'd like to start this exploration and adopt your new schedule, Andrea?" "Well, I suppose any time would work," she replied, with a hint of uncertainty in her voice. "Are you okay with my decision?" "No, I don't agree with any of this, Andrea," I said firmly. "When we got married, we promised to be partners and lovers for life. Now you want to look for other lovers. What am I supposed to think about this? It seems like you're stepping away from our marriage." "Love, it's not like that," Andrea said, frustration in her voice. "I need to find a connection that's been missing for a couple of years. Our lives have become all about work. I don't feel appreciated by you like I did when we first got married." "Appreciation? My God, everything I do for you," I replied, feeling my anger starting to boil. "I've been working hard to provide for us and build the future we dreamed of when we got married. We've almost paid off this house, for heaven's sake. I knew I had to address the most pressing issue. Are you planning on having relationships with other men?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Love, I can't say for sure what I'll do. If it feels right with the right person, I might consider it," she responded, avoiding my gaze. "So, you're thinking about infidelity?" I pressed, unable to hide my disbelief. "It's not infidelity, Rob. It's not cheating if you know," she calmly replied. My blood pressure was through the roof. I took a deep breath and sipped my coffee, wishing it were something stronger. I needed to stay calm to handle this conversation the right way. "Let me see if I understand this correctly, Andrea," I said, trying to make sense of it all. "You plan to meet other men, go out with them, and maybe even be intimate. Meanwhile, you'll still be living here with me. Is that right?" "Love, it's not that simple." "I'm not sure yet," Andrea responded, her voice uncertain. "It sounds pretty simple to me," I countered. "What about us? Are we supposed to put our marriage on hold? Do you expect us to remain intimate while you explore this?" "Of course, we're a family, you and me. I love you deeply, and I want us to stay a family. This is just something I need to do for myself," she said, her eyes pleading for understanding. "And how often do you plan to do this, Andrea?" "Every weekend. Several times a week. Every night." "How far are you planning to take this exploration?" "I haven't decided yet, love." "Why are you so focused on the details?" Andrea asked, sounding frustrated. "Well, I need to know what my life is going to look like while you're out meeting, dating, and being with these new partners. I don't have a girlfriend, Andrea, not yet, anyway," I added, the last part coming out more bitter than I intended. I took a deep breath and exhaled slowly, struggling to contain my anger. "Andrea, I need some clarity before we leave this conversation today. Have you made up your mind about this? Have you considered what this will do to our marriage?" Andrea nodded but didn't directly answer my question. It seemed like she hadn't thought much about how I might feel or considered my opinions. Then she said the phrase that would change our future, "If you love me, you'll let me do this," she said firmly. "If you love me, Andrea, you won't go through with this. This is my final warning. Infidelity, even with prior notice, is a marriage breaker." Now my plan needed to take shape. Here are my non-negotiable conditions. If you want to have relationships with other men, you'll need to move out. I will not share a home with you while you're dating and being intimate with others. Bringing them here is out of the question. You'll need to find alternate housing. Love, where am I supposed to live? Andrea asked. Maybe you can stay with one of your friends, like Jessica from school. You've spent time with her. She's divorced and alone, right? Ask her if you can stay with her for a while. If that doesn't work, you can rent a short-term apartment. You'll be responsible for all your expenses, utilities and your car payment, I replied. Andrea worked as a third-grade teacher at a primary school and earned a substantial income. I, on the other hand, was a forensic accountant specializing in audits for a large firm, also enjoying a good income with annual bonuses. From what she had said, it seemed I wasn't fulfilling all her needs in our relationship. Andrea seemed to perceive my willingness to compromise for the first time as she looked me in the eye, thinking she had won. I continued, so, if you're interested in having an open marriage, I suppose I'll have to be patient while you pursue your extramarital adventures. You'll eventually come home, right? Of course I will. I love you deeply. You're my husband, and I want us to have a family together, she responded. What am I supposed to do while you're out having intimate relationships with other men? Do you expect me to remain faithful to you? Should I wait for you to finish with your boyfriends and then welcome you back with open arms and love? Have you considered the impact this will have on me? I want you as my husband, love, and only you. No matter what I do while I'm out, it won't change my feelings for you. Once I come back, I want you to be my husband and the father of my children. I couldn't help but find this a strange way to express her love. I had already made it clear that I wouldn't allow her to bring her boyfriends into our home, and she seemed to see that as a victory. She could enjoy her time with other men without fear of my interference. All right. You need to figure out where you're going to stay and let me know this week. But for now, we have some things to arrange here. I want you to move your clothes and belongings into the guest room. I'm not sure I can share the same bed with you right now. Your plan is too painful, and I feel like you're leaving me, even if you haven't explicitly said so. So tell me, Andrea, what am I supposed to do with all of this? Andrea remained silent, possibly starting to realize that I wouldn't accept this without questioning it. She may have been surprised by my request that she leave our bed, but what did she expect? Did she honestly believe I was a complete pushover, willing to passively let her go off and have adventures, then return home to continue playing the role of a happily married couple, eventually having children and carrying on with life as if nothing had happened? Not a chance. Andrea was friends with another teacher, Jessica, and I suspected some of these misguided ideas might be coming from her. Jessica, a fourth-grade teacher divorced from the same school as my wife, had been caught cheating on her husband with multiple partners, which led to her dismissal 2 years ago. At 35 years old, Jessica was an attractive woman with a charming physique. Unfortunately, she had a habit of sleeping with any man who smiled at her. I strongly suspected that Jessica was influencing Andrea's desire to explore herself before starting a family. For me, the reality was simple: if Andrea explored too much, there would be no family, at least not with me. All that would be left was divorce. I stood up from the table and began to walk away. Andrea asked, "Is that it? Do you want me to move out?" "Yes, for now. Don't get me wrong, Andrea, I don't want you to go through with this. We made a commitment to monogamy when we got married, and you're planning to break that commitment. So what do you expect me to do? Do you think I'll just sit by while you engage with other men? If you want an open marriage, I suppose I'll have the same option too." Andrea was speechless, and I left before our discussion turned into a shouting match. I grabbed my car keys and left the house. "Love, where are you going?" she called after me. "I'm not sure right now, but don't forget to move your belongings to the guest room and start looking for a place to stay. And remember, there won't be any extramarital affairs until you've moved out," I replied as I left, closing the door harder than usual. I briefly considered driving to Jessica's apartment to confront her, but I knew I needed to let go of my anger and frustration for the moment. Andrea had initiated this confusing situation, and she could deal with the discomfort it brought. Besides, I suspected Jessica would be more than willing to take Andrea in, and I had to resist the temptation to confront her physically. On Monday morning, I got up and went to my office before Andrea woke up. I had a lot of work to do on my plan. Considering Andrea's intentions, I had no intention of tolerating her infidelity. Since she seemed to have made a decision about our marriage, I had to act. It hurt me that she thought she could have extramarital affairs and expect me to foolishly stay by her side, letting her do so, and then act as if everything was fine when she returned. What if she came back with an STD, or worse, pregnant? I wouldn't allow it. The first step was to contact my lawyer. My lawyer was a friend who handled various legal matters, like real estate and wills. I didn't expect him to handle the divorce directly, but he could give me a referral. He did, recommending a competent divorce attorney from his firm. I had a meeting scheduled with her that very afternoon. It was a difficult conversation, but my new lawyer was an experienced litigator well-versed in our state's laws. I didn't want this divorce to become contentious. In fact, I was content with a fair 50-50 split of our assets. Neither of us had much when we married, and we had both worked hard to build a comfortable life together. So, I was willing to divide everything equally. I wasn't heartless, and fighting over assets would only prolong the divorce process. The assets weren't worth holding on to if it meant dealing with a cheating spouse. The necessary paperwork would be prepared and held until I had proof of my wife's infidelity. Until then, this was just a first move on my part. The week seemed to drag on. I made an effort to spend as little time at home as possible, going out every night, mainly to the gym, to relieve stress. I noticed Andrea was spending a lot of time with Jessica. On Thursday, she informed me that she would stay with Jessica for a couple of weeks until she found a more suitable place. I knew this setup would be convenient for her to meet her boyfriends without interruptions from me. It seemed like Jessica might be entertaining her own boyfriends at the same time, turning it into a real mess. This situation was incredibly confusing. On Saturday, barely a week after celebrating our 5th wedding anniversary, my wife made her decision to pursue extramarital affairs clear by packing her belongings into her car and preparing to leave. However, she hesitated just before driving off. "Love, I don't want to go. Are you absolutely sure we can't find a way to work things out so I can stay?" she pleaded. "I love you deeply and really want to improve our marriage." I couldn't help but feel exasperation as I responded, "Andrea, if you truly loved me and wanted to improve our marriage, you wouldn't be going through with this. I want you to stay here at home with me, but I can't condone you being intimate with other men while you're still my wife. I love you, but I won't tolerate this. If you won't consider going to couples therapy to address our issues, I'm not sure what else to say. So please, go." As she loaded her belongings into her car, I drove to the hardware store to buy new locks for the house. I replaced the locks and changed the security code on the garage door opener. Throughout Saturday night and all of Sunday, I stayed home, staring at the walls, hoping Andrea would come to her senses and return. The following week turned out to be exceptionally challenging for me. I visited the gym daily and resumed running as a way to relieve stress. At times, I found myself sinking into deep depression, longing to go to Andrea and beg her to come back. Intellectually, I was still struggling to comprehend the fact that my wife was leaving me to have extramarital affairs while we were still married. It made me feel like a colossal failure. Was I really so inadequate that my wife was willing to openly display her infidelity? Apparently, that was the case. I turned to the internet to research the psychology of infidelity and why spouses cheat on their partners. I was shocked to discover that approximately 40% of married people engage in affairs. Even more surprising was that nearly 90% of them choose to stay in their marriages. Often, infidelity is tolerated in silence by the other spouse, especially when children are involved, making it easier for infidelity to continue as if it weren't happening. Many wives who cheat claim to still love their husbands and families but seek excitement outside the marriage, something they feel is missing at home. Many women involved in affairs express that their homes demand a lot of effort. The daily routine of maintaining a family, balancing children's activities, and dealing with mundane tasks make sex and intimacy with their husbands seem dull. They long for the excitement of a lover who focuses solely on them, without immediately discussing kids or chores after intimacy. Perhaps the key to a successful marriage lies in treating one's wife as if she were having an affair, without actually resorting to divorce, just enjoying the physical aspect. I contemplated the idea of trying to seduce my wife at the club she and Jessica frequented. People have affairs for various reasons: a lack of sexual satisfaction in the relationship, the absence of passion, or the loss of connection between spouses. Sometimes, they even cheat as retaliation for their partner's infidelity. Some women claim they cheat to save their marriages, although I'm skeptical of that. Nevertheless, it's what researchers who study marital infidelity have reported. Marriage is intricate, and relationships require effort. Open marriages, where both spouses consent to having other relationships and sexual partners, rarely survive in the long run. Emotional bonds form, feelings get hurt, and most couples end up divorcing. Polyamorous marriages are equally complicated, especially when children are involved. The threat of introducing a sexually transmitted disease into the relationship is a constant concern. Personally, I believe that monogamy is the best approach in a marriage. If both spouses do not agree with this, they should reconsider their mutual commitment or seek other people to be in a relationship. I had neglected my wife and pushed her away. I failed to give her enough attention while focusing on building a life for us. I made a mistake. What I do know is that I felt unhappy that my wife had left our home to have extramarital affairs. She was looking for things she believed I wasn't providing, but I couldn't see how her actions would lead to an improvement in our marriage. So, the next week passed slowly. Once again, I avoided calling my wife, and Andrea only sent a message requesting that her mail be forwarded to her new address. Her communication didn't indicate any desire to save our marriage, everything was strictly business. She was clearly pursuing her plan to find a boyfriend, or possibly two, for her own amusement. The thought crossed my mind to follow her from her apartment to the places she and Jessica went, just to find out who she was meeting. I drove by her apartment a few times but resisted the temptation to stop. I realized I couldn't do that to myself. I needed to let her make her decision, or she would never be my wife again. With each passing day, the likelihood of her returning decreased. Besides, the longer it went on, the less inclined I was to take her back. A month passed with minimal communication between us, when unexpectedly, Andrea showed up at the house without any warning. When her key didn't work in the lock, she rang the doorbell and knocked on the door. I answered, keeping a stoic expression. "Andrea, what brings you here today?" I asked. She responded, "Love, my key doesn't seem to work in the lock." "What's going on?" "That's because I changed all the locks," I replied calmly, blocking her entry as she tried to walk in. "What do you want, Andrea?" She responded, "I came to pick up some things I left when I moved out with Jessica." Once again, her visit wasn't about seeing me, it was purely about her belongings, with little regard for me or the pain she was causing. Did she not realize the damage she might be causing me? Was she so naive or delusional to think that I wouldn't care about her sexual affairs with other men, or that I would eventually take her back? "There are some boxes in the garage with your things that I collected from around the house," I said. "Why did you do that, love?" she asked. I let her in, as it was still partly her home after all. We headed to the garage, where she saw numerous boxes full of her belongings, ready to take. "How long do you plan to stay with Jessica?" I inquired. She responded, "Jessica has been very understanding. I'll stay with her a little longer. I'm sure it will only be a few more months, and then I'll come back as a better wife for you, love. Then we can start a family together." I couldn't help but roll my eyes internally at her comment, feeling a sense of disgust. How could she believe that her involvement with other men would somehow make her a better wife and prepare her for motherhood? I had very different thoughts on the matter. "Have you found a boyfriend yet?" I asked directly. Andrea blushed in response, and I didn't need an answer, I already knew. She finally admitted, "Jessica and I have gone out with some guys from the club we go to, but that's all." I couldn't resist asking more. "How is the sex with your new boyfriends?" Andrea blushed even more and started rummaging through the boxes of her belongings. I left the garage and returned to the kitchen to have my coffee and read the newspaper. A few minutes later, she came out, carrying a large bag and looking around the kitchen. Maybe she expected the house to be in disarray after her departure. To her disappointment, it was quite the opposite. I had hired a cleaning crew to visit 3 times a week, so the place was impeccably clean. There were no piles of dirty dishes, no stacks of empty beer bottles, and certainly no mountains of laundry. No, the house was in perfect order, and I focused on staying composed, despite the fact that my wife had left me to pursue relationships with other men. "Is there anything else you need, Andrea?" I asked, noticing her curiosity about how the house was functioning without her. She replied, "So, love, have you been doing all right since I started staying with Jessica?" "I'm fine," I responded. "I've been pretty busy with work, and I'm on the road a lot." Concerned, she probed further. "Love, have you been going out or staying home alone?" And there it was, the crucial question I had anticipated. It was time to introduce a little twist to the conversation and observe her reaction. "I've tried to keep myself busy," I explained. "I joined a cycling group that meets twice a week for organized rides. We start from a designated spot and ride together for 40 to 60 miles. It's been quite enjoyable, and I've met a lot of new people. They're a great group. We usually head to a place for a beer and a burger afterward, since all that cycling really works up an appetite. I made a conscious effort to distance myself from excessive alcohol since it wouldn't benefit me at all. My weight had dropped by 15 pounds in the last few weeks, partly due to the exercise and partly due to the stress caused by her actions. Regular physical activity was perhaps the only thing preventing me from having a complete mental breakdown." She responded with a tone that suggested more interest in my activities than her initial question implied. What I deduced was that she wanted to know if I had started meeting other women. As Andrea distanced herself from the house, she might have started to realize that her plan wasn't going as well as she had anticipated. It was possible that her loyal husband could meet someone else and decide he no longer needed to stay married to her. Her search for a boyfriend to compensate for the attention she believed her husband wasn't providing might have greater repercussions than she initially thought. I later discovered that Andrea was seeing 2 men from the club she frequented with Jessica and had been intimate with both on multiple occasions. However, neither seemed interested in spending quality time with her beyond those encounters. Both men were married and simply looking for casual fun, with Andrea serving as their source of entertainment, a classic case of being used and discarded by both of them. By the 2-month mark, I had accepted the disappearance of my marriage and was ready to initiate the next phase of my plan. Andrea had remained out of contact with me for weeks, clearly showing no thought for me or our marriage. She was free to pursue her desires, with no inclination or desire to return home. Even if she considered coming back, it would come with a multitude of conditions, and I wasn't sure if I would accept her. Besides my reservations, I discovered that she had taken a vacation to the Dominican Republic with one of her boyfriends during the school break. They indulged in a sun-soaked getaway, supposedly working on their tans and enjoying other pleasures. If this was her idea of strengthening our marriage through infidelity, it left much to be desired. Jessica's persuasive narratives had taken hold in Andrea's mind, painting me as a negligent husband who had neglected my wife before she decided to abandon our marriage. Now, Andrea resided in a 2-bedroom apartment with her discontented, divorced friend, and her reputation among other teachers and family members was rapidly deteriorating. When Andrea's mother found out her daughter had gone to the Caribbean with another man, she called me to ask why we had separated. She probably assumed we had been having marital conflicts. I revealed to her that her daughter had left me to have affairs with other men, a revelation she found incredible. She decided to speak directly with Andrea to learn the truth. Andrea's mother confronted her, asking, "Andrea, why did you leave your home? What's going on between you and Robert? Is he mistreating you?" To this, Andrea replied, "No, Mom, he's not mistreating me, but he's not giving me the excitement I'm looking for in a man. Right now, I don't feel desired or attractive to him. I need to feel desired, so I'm looking for that elsewhere for now. I just want to have fun before Robert and I start a family. I plan to go back to him in a few months when he appreciates me more, and everything will be fine. You'll see." Andrea's mother was stunned by her response and warned her seriously, "Dear, if you get involved in extramarital affairs, Robert won't want you as his wife. Cheating is the surest way to end your marriage, don't you understand that?" "I know Rob loves me, Mom," Andrea responded confidently. "He understands my needs. I'll go back home in a few months, maybe a year at most, and then we'll start a family." Andrea's mother made a sincere effort to talk sense into her but failed. Adopting the mindset of, "What's good for the goose is good for the gander," I decided to explore the possibility of life without her. It had been about 3 months since Andrea left, and it was time to move on. Gathering my courage, I asked one of the women I knew from my cycling group out on a date, mainly seeking female company and a break from the monotonous routine I had endured since my wife moved out. My daily routine consisted of work, the gym, cycling, and sleep, repeating day after day while I waited for this madness to end. That was my life. Part of me hoped Andrea would come to her senses and end this absurd situation by returning home. However, that seemed unlikely. I had to face the reality that she probably wouldn't come back, at least not as the wife I had married or the woman I once knew. It seemed like she was enjoying her newfound freedom, seeking the excitement and validation as a woman that had been missing in our marriage, echoing the motivations psychologists attribute to married women who cheat on their husbands. So, I decided to try arranging a date without appearing too desperate or simply flirting with someone randomly. That could be too strange, I thought. I wanted to get to know the people in my cycling group, and for them to know me, before considering asking one of the women on a date. I wanted it to be a genuine connection, not a pity date. Most of my cycling friends were aware of my separation from my wife, and I suspected that some even knew about Andrea's active dating life in town. In a town this size, news tends to spread. When I asked Diane, one of the women in the group, to join me for tea or a drink, I was pleasantly surprised when she accepted. I suggested a casual Saturday evening at a nice spot and planned a kayaking outing at a nearby lake before dinner. I had some experience kayaking from a few years ago, so I knew the ropes. Diane had never kayaked before but expressed interest, and we agreed on the plan. It became a date. We had a wonderful time kayaking, covering about 10 miles in around 3 hours. Afterward, we headed to a charming restaurant for a satisfying meal and drinks. I ordered a craft beer with a steak and fries, while Diane opted for white wine with a pasta dish. It was a relaxed and informal atmosphere, free of any pressure. We ended the night with ice cream from a stand on the boardwalk, and I drove her home. I told her I had a fantastic time, intending to give her a kiss on the cheek, but she surprised me by leaning in and kissing me on the lips. It was a lovely, unexpected moment. I didn't want to seem too eager, so I waited until our regular cycling meet on Tuesday to arrange another date. To my surprise, Diane expressed concern that my lack of contact might mean I hadn't enjoyed our time together. I quickly reassured her. Calling women too often can sometimes be seen as too needy, which tends to push them away. So, on Friday, I sent Diane a message, expressing my excitement about our Saturday golf outing and suggesting a time to pick her up. I also offered her the option to meet me at the golf club if she preferred. She kindly asked me to pick her up, and we agreed on a time. Our time on the golf course was a lot of fun, though neither of us had professional golfing skills. That night, we had dinner at my house, enjoying a barbecue and a bottle of wine. After the meal, as the night progressed, I prepared to drive her home, but she took my car keys from my hand, placed them on the kitchen counter, and asked to see the bedroom. The next morning, I woke up next to a stunning woman with her arm resting across my chest. Diane had beautiful, long dark hair, captivating green eyes, and flawless skin. A small scar on her chin from a bicycle accident added character to her lovely face. She was tall, around 5 feet 11 inches, maintaining a slender figure, probably weighing around 140 pounds, and was in excellent shape. Her occupation as a pediatric nurse at the hospital spoke volumes about her compassion for others. She was genuine, radiating a magnetic charm that had drawn me in from the moment we met. We enjoyed breakfast on my patio, and our conversation eventually turned toward my plans and the possibility of divorce. It was a sensitive topic, but I understood her need to know my intentions before investing emotionally in our connection. After all, no woman wants to invest time in a man who might reconcile with his estranged wife in a few weeks. When I explained to Diane the peculiar way Andrea had justified her departure, her expression confirmed what I already suspected: she believed Andrea wasn't coming back. I think that push from Diane helped me move forward with the next phase of my plan. On Monday morning, I contacted my lawyer and asked her to assign a private investigator to the case. I wanted to determine how many men were involved with Andrea before serving her the divorce papers. It turned out that she was seeing several men, most of whom were married, and they often met at Jessica's apartment to continue their parties after leaving various bars and clubs in the city. 2 weeks later, Andrea received the divorce petition, marking the beginning of a tumultuous period. That night, she drove to the house to confront me. When I answered the door, I found my estranged wife holding a large brown envelope, her face filled with distress. "Andrea, what brings you here tonight?" I inquired. She replied, "Love, a man delivered these papers to me today." "Why did you file for divorce?" "I told you I'd be home soon, even this week. We can start working on that baby we talked about." I invited her inside and asked her to sit down in the kitchen. "It's a little late for that, Andrea," I said. "I told you when you left that I didn't want you to go, but you did anyway." She tried to explain herself. "Love, I told you I needed to figure out who I am and feel good about myself." I interrupted with a hint of sarcasm. "So, do you feel good about yourself now? Are you validated as a woman? Have you explored your sexuality and new relationships, met exciting people, and had your intimate encounters?" I was growing agitated as I continued. "Because it sure looks like you've done that. I've had practically no communication with you since you left our home, not even a call on my birthday. You were probably too busy with one of your boyfriends in the Dominican Republic that week. Your mother even called me, wondering why you didn't call her on Mother's Day. You've spent all this time chasing physical pleasure." She pleaded, "Love, I love you so much, and I realize I may have gone too far. I'm coming home today." I responded firmly, "No, you're not." "Love, what are you talking about? I'm still your wife, and this is still my home. I'll go to Jessica's to pick up my things, and I'll be home in a few hours." I corrected her, "Oh no, you won't. Did you read all the documents in that packet you received? At the end, there's a court order specifying that you can't come within 500 feet of this house until the divorce is finalized. Technically, you're already violating that court order by being here. I'm not going to make an issue of it, but you need to leave now, and we can address this matter in court to settle the details." Andrea was slowly coming to terms with the seriousness of our marital vows, which included commitments like love, honor, respect, fidelity, and the crucial aspect of loyalty. I made it clear that this house held no sentimental value for me. If she wanted it, that was perfectly fine. It was almost paid off, so my half was worth about $150,000. She could have it for that amount. However, if she wasn't willing to pay that sum, we would sell it and split the proceeds. It was a simple arrangement, but for the moment, she wasn't moving back in while I remained in the house. I escorted her to the door, closed it, and locked it behind her. A month later, we managed to avoid the need for a court appearance and settled our divorce quietly. Andrea received half of our assets, as she was legally entitled to. We sold the house, and I moved on with my life. Andrea resumed her new routine, but I learned from a friend that her school, a charter school, had advised her to keep her personal life more discreet. Apparently, Some parents had found out about her involvement with multiple men in the area and were uncomfortable with her teaching their children, particularly the mothers who were quite vocal about it. Privately, it seemed that some of the fathers may have been her lovers. Subsequently, Andrea was diagnosed with a non-life-threatening sexually transmitted disease, which required a year of abstinence. This wasn't a significant concern, given that she was already pregnant. It seemed one of her companions had managed to father the child. Andrea's inconsistent use of birth control pills, her frequent alcohol consumption, and the absence of condom use were contributing factors. The father remained unidentified, but the child bore a striking resemblance to one of the teachers at her school, a married man. My divorce was officially finalized, and I was free from Andrea. About a year had passed since all the turmoil with her began. I bought a new house, received a promotion at work, and most importantly, Diane and I were now living together. We are excited to announce two things. First, we'll be getting married this summer, and second, we're expecting to become parents around Christmas.